Good evening. I'm Andy Eastman from Riverwoods, Illinois, and I'm part of Principles First Illinois State Leadership Team. I'd like to welcome you to our first Principles First dinner in Chicago. Free enterprise in the American way. For those of you not as familiar with our organization, Principles First is a growing, bipartisan, nationwide grassroots movement of people who share a love of American democracy and a concern for the direction of our existing conservative leadership. I encourage you to read through the 15 founding Principles First principles on our website when you get the chance. Two key principles that we will be sure to discuss tonight are number 9, free and functioning markets deliver prosperity, and number 15, America's role in the world is unique and important. The hour truly is late. Defending these foundational principles and others, including respect for the rule of law and the Constitution, will require unprecedented, vocal, courageous, bipartisan cooperation going forward. By reflecting this cooperation throughout Principles First activities, we hope to set a strong example for lawmakers on all levels of government to follow in their own actions. As Illinois' own Abraham Lincoln stated, the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise to the occasion. As our case is new, we must think anew and act anew. This perspective that Lincoln laid out in his December 1862 annual message to Congress is one that all engaged citizens must continue to embrace in our challenging times. Please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance along with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now I'd like to invite Heath Mayo, our founder of Principles First, to give a few brief remarks.
Thank you, Andy, and thanks everyone for being here this evening at, as he said, our very first Chicago dinner. We've had some grassroots meetups here in the Chicago suburbs before. We've been around since 2019, but this is certainly the first sort of formal dinner with programming like this, and so we are so grateful that you've taken time out of your week to be here with us as we take a stand for these principles and we come together to discuss just the real challenges that our country faces, and you know, I'll just get straight to the point. Many of us are Republicans, maybe still. A lot of us former Republicans. Some of us are Democrats in this room. Some of us are independents. But I think the thing that unites all of us in this room is that we sense the real and frightening urgency of this moment. I think a lot of us sense that something core to who we are as Americans is really in the balance. As we see a president who has completely changed sides of our foreign policy, kowtowing to Putin's whims, leaving Ukraine out to dry, raising tariffs on our allies, throwing the entire global economy into chaos on just sort of a whim and a tweet. It's causing, I think, many in our country to worry that, the ideas that and principles that make America America are really what's at stake. Set aside Democrat, Republican. Really, it's not about parties at this point. It's about what the country is and what the country ought to be. And so that is what Principles First is all about. So if that's how you feel, it's how we feel. I want you to know tonight that you have found your people. The people, yeah. Because the people in this room, there may be folks out there who, they're worried about what they're saying. That is not the people in this room. The people in this room, we are not going to bend the knee. We are going to stand up when it's hard, when it's difficult. You see attorneys in the Southern District of New York right now resigning, AUSAs, career prosecutors who have given their life in service of the Constitution and the rule of law, resigning these coveted positions in service to the country because they will not go against the oath that they swore to uphold and defend the Constitution, resigning their jobs. I don't know what they'll do next, but they find themselves in this unthinkable positions of having to go find a new job. Same with these law firms. You've got people taking real meaningful stands right now in defense of these core principles. And part of what we're doing here at Principles First is building that community of support for people who take those risks and take those stands. For people in this room, and I do want to focus on these concrete actions that we can all take, because I think that is what people are hungry for. We've had a dinner in Dallas. We're going to continue to do these gatherings all around the country because there's a hunger out there for them. But the first thing that we can do is build and grow the community of the people that you see in this room. What we're doing tonight is it is American. It's not new. It's not novel. It is like the essence of American citizenship. I mean, the Sons of Liberty did this on the Boston Green in Boston when they gathered and talked about our founding principles. It's what de Tocqueville said were the little platoons that in churches and town squares came together to defend the character of the country and define the character of the country, because the character of the country ultimately comes from the people, not the leaders in Washington, not the latest Truth Social post that goes out. That is not what sets and defines the character of America. But it takes work, as we've seen. This is not a preordained outcome. And building that community has to be done at the grassroots. And so what we do is we want to be that glue that helps you have these convenings to build these sort of democratic antibodies in our body politic that can push back against the disinformation. We need to be showing up, and whether it's dinners like this one or even if it's just meetups, at restaurants. That's how we started, just gatherings in small restaurants in your houses. We're going to the Iowa State Fair in August. Just to meet and be face to face with voters and making the case that this is about something bigger than politics. The second thing that you can do, run for office. There are people in this room right now. Some are in office. We'll hear from them. Some have been. Some may be in the future. But almost to a person in this room, I haven't met all of you. I've met some of you, but I'm willing to venture a guess that pretty much everyone in this room is better than most of the folks that we got in Washington. So if you've ever thought about running for office, I hope rooms like this one, rooms like the Principles First Summit, there's a well of support out there for you. If you've thought about it, take that leap. I think it is it can be challenging and daunting at times, but we do need good people who believe in these ideas to stand up and defend them. And we want to create that base of support for the folks who choose to do that as a good starting toehold if they take that leap. And then lastly, I mean, I don't know about you, but I just feel like I don't know if we're going to make it to the next election, honestly. So we got to really be people are hungry to take action now. And the way you do that is you speak up, you show up, we got folks that go to these protests. I think those are meaningful. Call your congressman, go to the town halls whenever they host one. Some of them aren't even hosting them. But show up and ask your questions and make the points and let them know that you care about these ideas and that this isn't just politics as usual. But in any case, thank you for being here this evening. We are showing up this evening. We are going to talk about these principles and the threats that face the country. We're thrilled to be joined by just a host of great speakers and leaders who have been out tip of the spear on these principles and leading when it hasn't been easy. And so I want to thank you and for being a part of this community. And we hope that you'll join us and you'll get involved. I mean, everything you see here, from the summit that we host in February in D.C. To these dinners, pretty much all grassroots run. I mean, the folks you met at the table when you came in, volunteers. The folks that set up this banner, volunteers. Andy Eastman, Brian Rice, volunteers, and then all led under the fearless leadership of our executive director, Brittany Martinez. If you haven't met her, I want to give her a round of applause for this spectacular evening. But this really is a blood, sweat, and tears, volunteer grit enterprise, and so I'm very proud to be a part of it, and I'm proud to have you here with us. And so, without further ado, I am honored to welcome to the stage our first speaker, and we're just thrilled to have her with us this evening. Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton is proud to serve as Lieutenant Governor of Illinois. Her mom was a public school teacher. My mom is also a public school teacher. She teaches fourth grade, so a point of commonality there. Her dad, a Navy veteran, was a doctor in safety net hospitals. Juliana became the primary caregiver for her mother, Velma, after she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It was both an honor and one of the hardest things Juliana has ever done, especially as a mom of daughters. Caregiving taught Juliana valuable lessons that continue to shape the leader she is today. She learned that between those who are well-resourced and those that are trying to make ends meet, there are a lot of families like hers who are just one emergency or one health crisis away from chaos. Juliana learned to be creative about finding resources and to be a good steward of those resources, which is one of our 15 principles, is to conserve and steward resources in an effective and efficient way. Because when you're caring for others, you must be accountable and leave no room for waste. That's another one that we believe in, is you can't waste the resources that we do have. And she learned that the best thing we can do for others is to show up when they need us the most. Above all, we must never, ever turn away from our most vulnerable. Every day, Juliana serves the people of Illinois. She thinks of her mother. Illinoisans deserve a leader who will get things done in a responsible way. We need to trust that those in charge will make decisions from the heart with the same level of attentiveness and care for all residents as she gave to her mom. Because that's really what government is about. Doing right by people, showing up for each other, and caring for our communities like family. And so I'm delighted to welcome to the stage Lieutenant Governor of Illinois, Miss Juliana Stratton.
Thank you, Heath, for that kind introduction. And good evening, everyone. Uh-oh. Either everyone's eating or you're not glad to see me. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the warm welcome, and a special thanks to my friend Brian Rice for inviting me to speak with all of you tonight. Now, right off the bat, I want to say thank you to Principals First for gathering us here and for the work that you're doing around the country to help move America closer to its ideals. It's thanks to the hard work of Heath Mayo and everyone who is a part of this organization that I feel hopeful when I look around this room tonight. These are indeed challenging times, but conversations like this and the actions that will follow are crucial, and I appreciate that you've made space for me and my voice. For those of you that I haven't had a chance to meet, and I did try to get around to every table, my name is Juliana Stratton, and I am honored to serve as the 48th Lieutenant Governor of Illinois. And while he's not here tonight, I do want to start by acknowledging my partner in governance, Governor J.B. Pritzker. Especially as we face the challenges of the past few months, he has been a leader for all Illinoisans, regardless of who they voted for, and I'm not only proud to work by his side, but I'm proud to be his constituent. Now, I'm sure you all know that I'm a proud Democrat, but I continue to find myself in rooms with people who love our democracy, but are disillusioned with the establishment. Whether the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, just as human beings, I can say that we are in crisis. And I hear that all across the state. As a state representative and now as lieutenant governor, I work across the aisle to get things done for the people of Illinois, including the work I've done in the agriculture space, because I know that there are folks on both sides of the aisle who know that government should be a force for good. And that's why I feel so honored to have this opportunity, because I know that finding common ground is crucial. But right now, I also know that Donald Trump and his MAGA allies don't care about finding common ground. That's why, for the rest of us who believe in working together in the best interest of our country, it's more important than ever that we build on our shared values. There may be a few issues where we might not see eye to eye, but I know that we share a love of country and a commitment to bettering the lives of those around us, especially at a moment like this. Now, right now, some of you may be feeling a bit lost. Our partisan politics may have left you feeling politically homeless, like you don't recognize the party that you once belonged to, like your fundamental beliefs in decency, honor, and truth have made you an outsider. I know, like me, many of you have watched the events of the last few months unfold with horror, anger, and heartbreak. So tonight, I want each and every one of you to know that I see you, and I hear you, and I recognize the sacrifice that you've made in the name of doing what is right. The very fact that you are here tonight shows me that you love this country and that you're not ready to give up on her. So on behalf of the great state of Illinois, thank you. As you heard in my introduction, like many of you, public service runs in my DNA. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. My mother was a public school teacher, my father a Navy veteran who served in community hospitals. And my parents taught me the meaning of service and instilled in me a sense of responsibility to give back to my community. And those principles have guided me and have kept me grounded throughout my career. When my mother, Velma, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, she lived with me, and I cared for her in her final years while raising my daughters and continuing a career in public service. It was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do, and it was also one of the greatest honors of my life. And I tell this story because I know that there's so many other Illinoisans who have stories similar to mine. They're juggling careers while raising their families, caring for sick parents, trying to stay above water. And I know it's not easy. I know how it feels to do your very best and still feel like you just can't get ahead. It's why I wake up every day feeling so blessed to have the opportunity to serve the people of Illinois. Their struggles are my struggles, and their wins are my wins. And leaders on both sides of the political aisle have been guided by those same values for decades, driven by a deep sense of duty and responsibility to help those they serve get ahead. But as I watch what's happening in Washington, as middle-class families across our state suffer under Trump's misguided policies, I find myself wondering what values are guiding this White House. Over the last few months, the Trump administration has dragged our country through a 5-alarm fire. One reckless policy after another, ignoring experts, ignoring common sense, ignoring the American people. The chaos is reaching a fever pitch, and hardworking Illinoisans are paying the price. Take Trump's trade war, for example. His misunderstanding of basic economic principles has sent the global economy into turmoil. It's made America a laughing stock on the world stage and fundamentally altered our relationships with our allies. And worse, this volatility is creating ripple effects at home, including right here in Illinois, where families will see prices increase on everything from the fruits and vegetables they eat to the cars they drive. The uncertainty isn't just impacting households. Trump's tariffs are hamstringing our small businesses too. And these businesses are the heartbeat of our economy and our communities. And so many will be forced to lay off staff, abandon their stock, or shut down altogether as a direct result of this president's policy choices. And the impacts will be devastating. Targeted tariffs are a tool. They are intended to be deployed precisely and strategically to advocate for American interests abroad. But Trump has decided to see every problem as a nail, and he's using his tariffs as a hammer. And the damage this could do to our economy cannot be overstated. At the end of the day, the American people are no better off, our businesses are no better off, and now we're locked in a trade war with China that threatens to hurt us more than it will hurt them. It's a lose-lose situation. And while Trump and his puppets liken these haphazard tariffs to the art of the deal, I can tell you as someone who spent 2 decades as a professional mediator, this is a textbook example of how not to negotiate. There will be no winning in Trump's trade war. The whole world will suffer, and hardworking Americans will shoulder the consequences. And the impact will be acutely felt in Illinois. Our Northeast and Northwest regions will bear the brunt of these trade policies, with several major employers and manufacturing hubs facing supply chain disruptions and cost increases. Governor Pritzker and I are not going to sit by and watch. We've moved quickly to shore up our subnational relationships with our key trade allies. Earlier this month, we led a delegation to Mexico City, where we signed a memorandum of understanding with the Mexican government. And just last week, we signed a similar agreement with the United Kingdom. We are sending a clear message, not just to our overseas partners, but to our business interests too. Even when you can't count on stable leadership in the White House, you can count on it in Illinois. We will work hand in hand with you to ensure that Illinois keeps its status as the best place in the country to live and do business. That's what true leadership looks like. Now, real leaders, they don't create problems. They solve problems. They deliver solutions. It was Donald Trump who campaigned on his business acumen and a promise to bring down prices on day one. Less than 100 days into his second term, those promises have gone out the window as he abandons working people to look out for his own interest. But there are consequences to broken promises, and the American people are starting to see through his lies. Now Trump's economic approval is at its lowest point ever, worse than any point during his first term, including during the COVID-19 pandemic. As prices rise, markets tank, and retirement savings get depleted, the American people are losing confidence in Trump's ability to handle the economy. And pretty soon, even those who voted for him will start to lose confidence in him altogether. And while I hope these flashing warning signs will convince him to change course, I know that this is unlikely. Donald Trump will never admit a mistake. He'll shut down anyone who dares to push back. We see it in his constant ugly attacks on his critics. In recent weeks, he directed the Justice Department to go after Miles Taylor and Chris Krebs, 2 public servants from his first term who had the courage to speak up. He did the same thing to Congressman Adam Kinzinger, a true patriot who stood up in the wake of the January 6th insurrection on our Capitol. And who chose to put our democracy over partisan politics. I know that I speak for so many Illinoisans when I say that I am glad that there are Republicans like Adam holding the GOP to account. Thank you for your service. Friends, let's be clear-eyed about the challenges ahead. Donald Trump is ignoring the rule of law. Donald Trump is tanking our economy for his own personal gain. Donald Trump is attacking the very people he swore to serve, including our veterans, the brave men and women who put their lives on the line for our country. He is trying to break us, our economy, our institutions, our systems, and the only antidote to this madness is courage. Right now, people are looking to leaders, asking us not to back down, to stand firm and to call out his failures, but they're also asking us to articulate an alternative to his chaos. That's what we're doing here in Illinois. Governor Pritzker and I are leading with solutions and showing the country that there is a better way to do things. While Donald Trump raises costs, attacks our freedoms, and destroys everything in his path, here in Illinois, we're bringing down cost, expanding access to opportunity, and protecting our rights. Because to be frank, that's what the people of Illinois deserve. Now, that's how we'll continue to lead, no matter what attacks the Trump administration throws our way. So, for those of you who are feeling lost, I just want you to know that you have a home here. These aren't normal times, and this fight will take all of us working together to defend the values that we hold so dear. And there's so much energy in this room tonight, but there's energy that's building all across this country, thanks to Principles First and so many others. Energy amongst people who love our country. If Donald Trump is counting us out, then he's never been more mistaken. He's never been more mistaken. Because while it will be hard, and I always say this, our only way forward is together. Our only way forward is together. And I want you to know that I'm with you in this fight. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Principles First, for inviting me.
Ooh-wee. That was good. Good evening. My name is Brian Rice. I'm a volunteer with Principles First and have been for 2 years or so. All right, thank you. I think what I would say too is, like, so many times I'm Illinoisan, lifelong Illinois, Chicagoan, and so many times in these times you hear somebody that says, just thank God I live in Illinois, you know? And I think a lot of times what they're saying there is thank God for leadership like Juliana Stratton and J.B. Pritzker in the context of the broader country where we're at right now. It's my pleasure to introduce our next panel, which will explore the economy and specifically how the administration's approach to tariffs may be impacting everyday Americans across the country. Joining us for this important conversation are three distinguished voices: Adam Kinzinger, Dan Lipinski, and Charlie Sykes. Adam Kinzinger, former U.S. Representative for Illinois' 11th and 16th congressional districts from 2011 to 2023. He's a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. Adam Kinzinger gained national attention for his bipartisan stance during the January 6th investigation. That's when I began volunteering for his group as well, Country First, an amazing organization, very aligned with Principles First. Thanks for being here. Dan Lipinski, former U.S. Representative for Illinois' 3rd Congressional District from 2005 to 2021. A political scientist and engineer, Lipinski was known for his efforts to work in a bipartisan fashion on Capitol Hill. Next, we have Charlie Sykes, an American political commentator and the former editor-in-chief of The Bulwark. Charlie. From 1993 to 2016, he hosted a conservative talk show on WTMJ in Milwaukee. Sykes is a frequent commentator on MSNBC and has written for the New York Times, Wall Street Journal. And last is the moderator of our panel and Principles First founder, Heath Mayo. I'll hand it over to you, Heath.
Hey, handsome crowd.
This is where we really start to unwind, and this is just off the cuff. No, we'll just jump right in. I mean, first of all, thank you all for being here. This is a fantastic panel in a setting like this. I think I speak for all of the attendees. It's just how fortunate it is to have all of these guys assembled to kind of tackle these issues. There's a lot to unpack, obviously, and we'll try to get to as much of it as possible, and then I want to get to audience questions pretty quickly. So be thinking about what you want to ask, and we'll come to audience Q&A in a minute. But Adam, I'll start with you. Before we get into just the economic chaos, I mean, I think you had a video out a couple days ago that I think literally everyone in our organization, all of our grassroots people was like, did you see this? Did you see this? I'm totally agree with what he's saying. Where you were basically like, I've never seen it this bad in my life. And we believe in the Constitution, we believe in democracy, but we also believe in civic action and engagement when core things are threatened. That's why you see these protests. And you were like, it's getting close to time where we gotta really be standing up for these things and think of ourselves like those patriots did at the founding. Do you see it getting worse, getting better? Like, what do people in this room need to be thinking about in their headspace right now?
Well, by the way, thanks everybody, and Heath, thanks for throwing this. Principles First. This is great. It's good to be here. And also, I have a friend here. I only know her by her X handle. It's Arsenal of Democracy, and I want to point her out because it's things like that. Where's she? Where are you? Oh, there you go. Yeah. I've known her just through X, and we've met a couple times, but like you can watch her engage on stuff like Ukraine. And what I'm saying by that is people like her make a real difference in some of these conversations. And that's the thing. So when I talk about action, look, what we have to start thinking about is, if you think back to the time of the revolution, look, I'm not calling for a revolution, let's be clear, but if you think back to that time, there were little things that happened, and ultimately this group of people had to make a decision that was really uncomfortable. We read about these decisions in the history books, and they seem easy because you're like, yes, the crown was terrible, but people had lives. Everybody in the colonies had a life. They were farming, they were raising kids, they were dealing with everything, maybe with a little bit of a different twist that we deal with today. And what we're seeing right now is an actual attack on our Constitution. And so the question is, what is the escalating pressure that we can put on in counterforce to that? And that's why I think things like hitting the streets and the protests are so important, to continue to do that, to protest your congressman's office and their town halls. Don't confront them in public, because I think that actually backfires. But go to protest their town halls and protest and force them to have town halls. I'm going to tell you, as a congressman, Dan may disagree, he may agree. I hated town halls. I did them, but I hated them, right? Because I had to stand in front of you and be accountable to my actions. Otherwise, I could just put out tweets and say things. So the thing that we have to think through as people, though, is what are we going to do? What happens when this crosses the line? What are we willing to do? Is it a general strike? Is it everybody hitting the streets? And I'm not saying we're at that point yet, but we could be. And that's what I think we have to start thinking through as people, because otherwise we have to accept either, if Trump isn't stopped, either we have to accept that this is the end, that this awesome experiment called the United States of America that lasted over 250 years, this is it. It died with our generation. We either accept that or we make a decision that we're going to stand up and push back.
And Charlie, I want to go to you next. Speaking of pushing back, and standing up in places where it's hard to stand up, you were one of the first, really. I think. I mean, when people come up to me and someone's like, I wanted to say hello to Charlie because he's one of the first people that told me, we weren't the crazy ones. And you were, yeah, exactly. It was you. But you really were a leading voice, intellectual voice in the conservative movement. I mean, you were on the airwaves, you were in the pages of all of the conservative movement magazines, and you name it. Charlie Sykes was there. How do you see you're doing this now to the contrary, you're out there, you're engaging every day. Is this a battle that we can fight and win in terms of pushing back against all this onslaught of just disinformation and just crap that we see? Does telling the truth work, I guess?
Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? That's so I do feel vindicated, but I thought it would feel better. When you've been warning this will really be terrible, this will really be dangerous, democracy is at risk, the Constitution is at risk, and people said, well, you suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. There's a moment you go, see, I told you so, but it does not feel any better. By the way, speaking of Adam's video, I believe you're referring to his, the time has come to, fight or flee, right? That's the one. And so I texted Adam and I said, fleeing sounds good these days. And he answered to me, dude, you'd pull a hammy. So there's no respect. There's no respect. I guess the thing that I would say is this, that if you're feeling confused and overwhelmed, that's a sign that you're paying attention, because it is confusing and it is overwhelming. We've never experienced anything like this. I don't think our system is set up for the kind of shock and awe that we've been experiencing. And so I think one of the real values of gatherings like this is this recognition that we're not alone, that there are other people who share the concerns, who are watching this and going, what is this madness about? Is it me? Am I missing something? No, you are not the crazy ones. And what we are watching is a very, very crazy but also extremely dangerous moment. And we can't overstate that. And Adam has talked about this very eloquently. And it will require people reaching across the aisle to fix this. But it's not going to be easy. And look, I'm wearing all black because I don't want to be any of you to think that I'm optimistic. Okay. But I am hopeful. There's a difference between hope and optimism, right? The belief, optimism thinks, hey, this will pass, things will get better. Hope is, if we fight, if we struggle, we can make it better. We can actually make it better. And it does come down to courage. And I think in the first 60, 80 days of the Trump administration, we saw a lot of people who were overwhelmed with fear, who figured that the smart thing to do was to bend the knee. It's too early to say whether the tide is turning, but I would say this. Watch what the Supreme Court is doing and saying. Watch what the markets are saying. Watch what the American people are saying. Don't count on Republicans in Congress ever to get off the mat, because that's not going to happen. But Americans are slow to be aroused. Sometimes it takes a while for democracies to fully understand the threat, but when they do, they're formidable. And I do think that, as overwhelming as it's been, take a deep breath. And just remember, it's only been 90 days, and in the great scheme of things, in the great scope of history, that's not a long time. It takes a long time for people and democracies and institutions and cultures to absorb this kind of change. But I will say this, and Adam, I was thinking about something you and I both did last summer. 6 months ago tonight, I sat on a stage in Wisconsin, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, with Liz Cheney and Kamala Harris. And I texted a picture of that to my wife. She said, yeah, that was a million years ago, back when we had hope for the country. But no. But one of the things that did happen was that we did reach across the aisle. Adam Kinzinger spoke at the Democratic National Convention. So it's possible. Now, I will say that there's a segment in the Democratic Party, including some of the talking heads on MSNBC, who think that's a terrible mistake, that it was a mistake to make common cause with Liz Cheney, that it was a mistake to do an event with me or to have Adam Kinzinger, because that wasn't the base. But this is the key. If we actually understand that it's an existential crisis, crisis of democracy and the Constitution, it's going to require all hands on deck. It's going to require people. And I think that Heath understands this. Heath understands, I think, at a visceral level, we're not all going to become Democrats. We're not all suddenly going to, become progressives or agree on every single thing. We're going to have to stand on principle, and we're going to have to make common cause with people that probably we never thought we'd be in the same room with. So, Adam Kinzinger never thought he would be at a Democratic National Convention. I never thought that I would be sitting next to Kamala Harris, but give them credit that they reached across that aisle. That's desperately needed going forward. So if there is a success, that's the kind of thing that's going to have to happen. And I hope that we're embodying that here tonight as well.
Yep, thank you. Well, speaking of embodying, reaching across the aisle, Dan, I want to go to you next. I mean, you have spent time in Congress like Adam. You represented the part of Illinois as a Democrat, Blue Dog Democrat, Principles First Democrat. I'm curious, as you look at Congress, what's going on with Congress? I mean, what is? Should we just write it off as a lost cause, or is there room for reform and for a new wave of principled, pragmatic leaders to come in and change the institution?
Well, first of all, thank you, Heath. Thank Principles First for inviting me. It's my first Principles First event. I love what you're doing. It's incredibly important. Thank you all for being here. I worked with Adam on a number of things when we were together in the House. I served 16 years as a Democrat from the southwest side of Chicago, southwestern suburbs. And I never believed that, I thought my party is just a label. It's an organizing label. And what I see is partisanship for so many people has become a fundamentalist, pseudo-religious identity. For the Republicans, they have their clear leader that they all follow as, bow down to. He is a religious leader to Republicans, and that's so hard to break. When I was in Congress, as a Democrat, I was not on Nancy Pelosi's good list because I was very much an independent Democrat. We tried to change the House rules to try to take some power away from the Speaker and try to give members power again. But unfortunately, you know what happened? Members of Congress don't seem to want to really exercise the power that the Constitution gives them. But I think it's pathetic, really. I mean, if you run to be a member of Congress, we don't have co-equal branches. Congress is Article 1 because Congress is supposed to have the power. Congress needs to take that power back. Now, am I counting on the Republicans to do that? No, but that is where the leverage is right now, and it's when you start to peel Republicans away from Donald Trump because they are scared that they're scared not of a primary, they're scared that they're going to lose in the general election, and they're worried already. That's where the leverage is, and I think that's where we have to go after, and that's where, as Adam said, I hated town hall meetings. I felt I needed to do them. It was my responsibility to do them, and you can tell that members hate to do them when the Republicans in the House have been told don't do them. Because it's just causes trouble. And the leadership in the House doesn't want them to do it because they know you get out in front of 200, 300 people and they all start yelling at you. You do, no matter who you are, you start to question, maybe I'm not doing the right thing. So that we need to keep that pressure on. I'm with Charlie. I'm never an optimist, but I have hope, and we have to have hope. And is it going to work? As you asked, are we going to be able to stand up? I don't think that's a proper question. I think the right question is, are we going to do it? Because the real answer, what we really need to answer is, do we have the courage to do it? Because we have to do it. Right? In Abraham Lincoln, I believe it was 1838, speech to the Springfield Lyceum, he said, just as the founders pledged their fortune, their lives, and their sacred honor to defend the Declaration of Independence, we must do that to defend the laws in the Constitution of the United States of America. Because at that time, there was a lot of political violence going on, and violence of all sorts going on in the country in the 1830s. We need to have leaders to stand up and say that again today. We don't hear that. The only time we hear people talk about the Constitution, I think, is largely when they're using it as a political weapon. We have to really believe it and understand the privilege we have to be here in the United States of America. Most of us are probably citizens of the United States, at least residents of the United States of America. We need to have the courage to stand up. We need to be grateful that we are here and show our gratitude by having the courage to stand up, because it's not guaranteed. What we have here in the United States, our democratic republic, is not guaranteed. And more people need to understand that. That's the toughest thing. I think so many people think, it's just going to continue. There's no... Yeah, things might be bad now. And even people are like, I don't like what Trump's doing right now, but everything's going to be okay. That's the way you lose a republic, a democracy. And so we need to encourage people to get out there and to care. I always talked about, and I learned not to talk about the process in Congress, because people don't care about process. They care about results. But the process is so important in getting people to understand that it's up to all of us to do that. So, again, I appreciate principles first. That's what you're doing.
Well, thanks, Dan. Well, one of the things that I'm originally from Texas, but one of the things that I really always appreciate about coming to Illinois is, in addition to Wrigley Field, is the fact that nearly Dan and Andy, every Illinoisan I met can somehow quote Lincoln Douglas speeches, chapter and verse. It's like at the Lyceum in Springfield on 18. Like, man, that is good. Sign me up for that. That's good. Anyways, the next place I wanted to go, obviously, you talk about congressional power and Congress needing to take its power back, which it seems like none of them want to do. But the place that's really hammering Americans right now is obviously with these tariffs. And I do want to talk about this because it does seem like the dog has caught the bus a little bit on this. I don't think anybody anticipated, even his most stalwart defenders in Congress, anticipated that he was going to go crazy tariff man with like 125% on all of our allies. And as I understand it, he's using sort of this delegated authority through IEPA, which is sort of this emergency statutory authority that Congress grants to the executive, on the premise that the executive is not some crazy person that's going to, I think the idea of it, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, was basically that if one of our trading partners institutes some sort of aggressive tariff that departs from the status quo, then the president could respond quickly without an act of Congress, not go out and levy this whole new war to reshape the global economy. But look, S&P, since he's been elected, the market's down something like 15%. So Americans who are starting to retire are really concerned about what they have to go off of. The U.S., I think, and what we've heard from J.P. Morgan, Morgan Stanley, the bankers, that usually is accompanied by a cushioning effect in currency, the dollar strengthens when that happens. Bond yields go down. What has happened in this case is trust in the United States, investor trust and confidence in the leadership of the United States has sunk at the same time that asset values have. So what has happened? Dollars are now 11% cheaper relative to everything else in the country. So your dollar now is worth less. And we've also going to have inflation as a result of these tariffs. Adam, I mean, is this, what is going to cause members of Congress to hold him to account on this? Is it going to be pain, at Americans' pocketbooks? Do you even think that is likely? I mean, it sounds like they're all sort of just marching in tune to this nonsense. I mean, it feels like this could be one of the first opportunities where the outcome of Trumpism for all the people who supported him could actually really not go so well for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's possible because, look, and you guys all talked to these people during the election. There are the hardcore Trumpers that, I mean, this guy could literally skin a cat alive on TV and nobody would care, right? Or they think it was funny or owning the libs. But then there's a significant amount of the Republicans that voted for Trump that maybe didn't like him, but they remembered the first time, and they somehow think, despite COVID, he was great economically. And the only thing he actually did economically that helped was just the deregulation piece of it. Everything else was a disaster. But in this case, I think if we see a serious economic downturn, and the stock market's what gets all the attention, but the reality is that's just an emotional thing, right? I mean, it's going to go up and down. It just depends on if people want to put money in it or not. That's all it is. But it's a little bit of a canary in the coal mine. The real issue is the fact that why is it that we can sustain a $37 trillion debt? It's a terrible debt, but why can we sustain it? Because the rest of the world looks at us and says, we're going to keep our money safe in the United States, and they can buy that debt at low interest rates. The second, as Heath was talking about, that people lose faith, those interest rates go up. Obviously, it affects all of our lives. All of a sudden, you're seeing the $900 billion that we spend in interest payments every year, by the way, more than national defense, just so you know, that we now goes to $1 trillion and a half, crowds out all this other spending. But that is the problem. So the tariffs, they're awful, they're terrible, and frankly, yes, we should be fighting back against Chinese unfair trading practice, but you do that with friends, not also against friends, and then actually push them into the arms of China, obviously. Like, this is the weirdest thing. But what worries me the most is what this is doing to the alliances that were built with the blood of American youth in World War I, World War II, in Korea, in the global war on terrorism, where people stood up and said, we will stand with our allies in the United States. I have a friend I lost in the global war of terrorism. You guys know I'm a veteran of that. My grandfather fought in World War II. After they beat the Nazis, we stayed in Europe. We were war fatigued, but we stayed in Europe and built a new world order that benefited. Look, we're a great country. We do things out of the kindness of our hearts, but we also do things that benefit us. The world order that we built after World War II was hugely to our advantage. When you have Pete Hegseth saying things like, God dang, why is only the United States Navy the ones that can open up the Red Sea? Because the United States Navy said that it's their mission to be the single and sole source of freedom of navigation. We told the Europeans we would do it. And so you can't say we're going to be the freedom of navigation guys and then be pissed when they don't help you. And by the way, the Brits and French had been helping us in the Red Sea. But when you crap on your allies, all of a sudden you're going to find yourself alone. And this amazing economy we have and this amazing country we have may still continue to be the leader of the best economy. We'll see. But when you do that without your friends, you get crushed. And the Chinese are taking our friends and scooping them up like trash we threw out. And that's what's dangerous. And so, yes, I do think if this hits people's pocketbooks hard enough, and you see that part of the base that voted for Trump that really didn't like him, which is significant, say, screw this guy, then I think you could see a sea change. I'm hopeful. I'm not optimistic.
Charlie, one of the things that has motivated this shift in the Republican Party really about how they think about economic policy, obviously it's just been Trump, people like Trump and Steve Bannon, just like it was what they thought was a good idea, and so everybody just kind of fell in line with it. But I'm curious, this economic populism argument. I mean, if I were to put into words what they say, they basically say that all of these countries are ripping us off, and that, any trade that we do with someone else, we're getting bamboozled. And, this is fundamentally anathema to conservative principles, the entire thing that informed the Republican Party. They flipped it on its head. Do you think the voters actually have bought into this? Or do you think that they're just sort of clapping along as Trump is doing this, and the minute that it goes sideways, they're going to say, what were we thinking?
Well, the answer to that question is which voters. The hardcore people actually could perform abortions in the Oval Office and they'd be fine with it. But to your point, that, by the way, was something that Ann Coulter said, that he could do that as long as he sealed the border. Look, there's a couple of points here, and I'll be brief about it. The abdication of responsibility by Congress is truly amazing. Article 1 and they have gone home. They are not a factor in this. They are not a player in this. I'm old enough to remember when Congress actually had debates, when they passed laws, when they felt that they were part of the public debate. That's no longer the case. The second point is to underline what Adam just said about our allies. And it's not just on trade. Donald Trump has switched sides in the Cold War. I try not to be shocked by anything, but watching the United States not just abandon Ukraine, but vote with Russia in the United Nations was a truly stunning moment, not just for us, but for the rest of the world, which is now asking, which side is America on? Can we trust America? Can we rely on America? And like all relationships, once trust is broken, it's very, very difficult to get it back. And much of the rest of the world right now is thinking, okay, maybe we will go it alone. Maybe we have to go it alone. Maybe the future of Western democracy will be decided by Norway, not the United States of America. And this, I think, is embodied in the trade war, where we have insulted and threatened our allies, some of our closest friends. Canada. How many people in this room last year were sitting around thinking, I really hope that Donald Trump fucks with Canada? And yet the rest of the world is looking at this and going, okay, what's going to happen? Now we get to one of the hardcore bases for Trump, which is the business community, which really honestly believed that Donald Trump was going to be the most pro-business candidate ever. That, in fact, he would usher in this economic golden age of lower taxes, deregulation, and growth. And right now, they're all going, holy crap. Because what Donald Trump has inserted into the world economy, not just the markets, is uncertainty. That essentially the entire economy of the world is not determined by policy, is determined by what is going on in his head in any given day. This is a man in 5 seconds who can erase trillions of dollars in value by a single social media post. Or he can whisper to his friends and add another $1 trillion again to his friends and his cronies. What this means is, if you're an investor, you think, do I want to be long or do I want to be short? Because I don't know which way he's going to go. This is going to paralyze the economy. It's going to paralyze the markets, because we never anticipated a world in which one man would have this much power. This is something that thinkers about politics have been warning about for millennia. Why we have checks and balances, why we have a constitution, why we have a Congress, believe it or not, which is that we not only don't have kings, but we don't have emperors who rule by whim. And right now, we are seeing rule by whim, and I think that's rattling a lot of folks. Now, what effect will it have? I know a lot of people who say, I don't care what Donald Trump does to anyone or what he says, as long as my 401k is healthy. Many of those folks will suddenly become interested in a lot of other issues. I think if their 401ks go down.
Dan, we'll wrap with you on this, and then we'll go to questions. So be thinking about if you have one, just hold it, and then we'll come to it in a second. But one of the things that Lieutenant Governor Stratton emphasized in her remarks was the importance of sort of articulating an alternative vision of where the country ought to go. And I think Trump in his nonsense has sort of given all of us a blessing in that regard, because one alternative is just to stop everything that he has done. I mean, it's like I'm curious to what you think, what the appetite would be within the Democratic Party or just in the country more generally about an economic growth package that would just basically broker a bunch of free trade agreements, pause all of these tariffs, get the economy back into sort of a global stasis where people can trust the United States again. You could basically unlock just a ton of economic value and growth overnight with the flip of a button. I'm curious, I mean, what do you see as sort of the go-forward plan and counter-argument to all of this that isn't just, it's nuts, it's nonsense, and what in the hell he's thinking, it's hell in a handbasket? What's that alternative view that we can be putting to voters to say it doesn't have to be this way?
Well, I have been a critic of my own Democratic Party for many years. And one of my concerns right now is that the Democratic Party is not going to learn its lessons, and 2026 is going to be a great year for Democrats, and we're back to where we were before. Now, we might be able to stop Donald Trump, but we need a better vision of where we're going to take this country, where we want this country to go. And I think what the Democratic Party has failed to do is, look, he appealed. This whole thing about trade has been, I couldn't agree more with the comments, especially Adam's comments, about how ridiculous this has been done with the tariffs. But I think people agree, go after China. All right? Democrats need to not just run away and say everything Trump is doing is bad. They need to say, okay, what's the Democratic Party want to do about this? Because as far as I'm concerned, in the Democratic Party, the party it ran away, it lost working class voters for a reason. All right? It wasn't accidental. Donald Trump wasn't some genius who figured out how to appeal to working class voters. Democrats just kind of wrote him off. And that's basically what happened to me. I lost the Democratic primary. My base was working class voters, traditional Democrats. And that just wasn't selling in the Democratic Party anymore. All right, so Democrats have to have a positive vision, and they have to have something to offer for working class people. The border obviously was a major issue. The way that Democrats treated the border and the Biden administration did, American people were very unhappy about that. All right? So Democrats need to turn around and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And we need that. Democrats need that kind of positive vision. And I've been pushing in these directions. My entire time. I entered Congress in 2005. I was pushing in these directions, and the party just went the other way. And Democratic Party helped to create Donald Trump, as far as I'm concerned. The Democratic Party did things that made it easy for people who are in the middle to say, yeah, we're a little concerned about Trump, but the Democrats are terrible. And like Adam said, I think the people who really swayed this election were ones who said, I think the economy was good under Trump. And all this inflation under Biden, I'm going with Trump. Right? So Democrats need to respond to that, need to have, and it's tough though when you don't have a clear leader, but that's what needs to be done. Democrats need to make it clear that they've gotten the message and they're actually going to change, and they're going to go back to being a party that cares about the working class, and a party that does actually believe that we should have a border. Everyone can't just come into this country, or a welcoming country, but it can't just be an open border. Things like that, Democrats need to do, and do it quickly, because again, Trump became president because Trump always, he talked about issues that other politicians did not want to talk about. Right? There was a niche that he found, and again, it's not because he's a political genius. I could have told you that there's a big problem, that there's these Democrats that the Democratic Party is leaving behind. Trump reached out to them, and that's what he was able to do. Democrats need to say, okay, we have a plan, a smart plan, a plan that's actually going to help you, and I think it'll be easier when, unfortunately, I mean, the economy is being tanked right now by Donald Trump, and a lot of it comes down to James Carville's line, it's the economy, stupid, and I think that's going to make a difference, but we can't just rely on that. Democrats can't just rely on that.
You know, he's kind of lowering the bar on immigration for you guys too, because now basically you can just say, we won't deport U.S. citizens and ignore court orders. That's pretty easy bar to clear if you think about it. Okay, questions? Sure, right here.
I guess kind of a two-part. First is, let's assume for a second that we get the country back in order and we allow MAGA to dissipate to some degree. MAGA has a real stranglehold on an enormous swath of people. Adam, you and I have a mutual friend, Rich Logis, who founded Leaving MAGA. I don't know if anybody in the room has heard of Leaving MAGA. Yeah. I've been trying to help Rich for a couple years, 2 years now, whatever it is, get this nonprofit off the ground, because we need a community for these people where they can feel safe. Mm-hmm. And half of them, I'm sure in this room, as family members that are deep MAGA, half of my family I don't see anymore. Yep. So it's really sad. So one, I'm curious what Adam and the panel thinks of Leaving MAGA, groups like that. How does that play a role? And the second is I am a centrist independent. I like I was sharing with the table mates. I call myself a militant centrist. Yep. And I really think, independent my entire life, and I really think the Democrats have an opportunity to own the center again. And not just center left, but bring in center right, because all these people that have had it, a lot of them are in this room, we can all come together. And when I bring that point up, especially online on Twitter, people go, well, we tried that. You know, the left goes, we tried that on this, this last one. This was not a real race this first go around. So I'm curious on the two. Those are two relatively different.
Well, let me first off say the Democrats did try it, and had they not tried it, they would have gotten beat worse. I mean, there was a huge amount of Republicans that voted for Kamala Harris, okay? The problem is there were a huge amount of Democrats that voted for Trump, okay? And that's what's happening. We're in the middle of a political realignment, and I think we have to understand that. What I say is, like, look, if I'm in a trench and in Ukraine, and there's, all of us there in the trench, and we have an enemy that's 20 meters away and 5 meters away, I'm telling these guys, as a military officer, focus everything on that 5-meter target and ignore the 20-meter target. The 20-meter target is the differences, right? Somebody who is pro-life or pro-choice or pro-gun or anti-gun or whatever, and then we get focused on that stuff when right here is the threat, which is you will not have a democracy. And by the way, all these things you disagree on will pale in comparison when you die of diabetes because Walgreens can't get insulin anymore because the economy in the country has fallen apart, right? That's what we're up against.
RFK has pulled its certification.
Yeah. And so, yes, I think if the Democrats can get past, this is what I worry about. I like the AOC Bernie stuff going on. I worry that the message from that is that the Democrats need to go further left. You will lose. You will lose. I'm just telling you. And then the other thing I'll say is Democrats particularly, but all of us men in here, we have a problem with young men, and it is our fault. It is our fault because we have not given young men an example of what real masculinity is. Half of the country used to tell young men that masculinity was toxic. And then the rest of us that didn't believe masculinity was toxic stayed away from the fight. And all of a sudden, Joe Rogan comes in and fills that. Donald Trump comes in with toxic masculinity and says, it's okay to yell. It's okay to punch down. It's okay to tweet in all caps. That's real masculinity. And all of us men have failed to talk about the fact that real masculinity is punching up. It's protecting people. It's protecting your family. It's fighting for something. It's defending things. And we got crushed with men. And so when we talk about groups like Leaving MAGA, whoever was talking about identity, the religious, was it you, Charlie? The religious identity? Oh, it was you. It was Dan. How it has become a religious identity as people's political viewpoint. That's what it is. So how do you strip people of their identity? You give them another identity. You give them a family. You give them a home. And we have to think of this as a cult. It really is. You know, the brilliant thing about Donald Trump is if Charlie Sykes or Adam Kinzinger, as Republicans, would say, you know what, we were wrong. I actually love Donald Trump. I would be in the Oval Office tomorrow because he'll welcome you back. But the lesson is never stray again, right? That's what cults do. They'll always welcome you back, but then they put tougher things on you.
That's what JD did. JD's vice president.
Totally. So groups like Leaving MAGA are amazing. If you're not following Rich on like Twitter or anything, you should, and you should support him because, again, the best thing he does is he shows a testimony like, guys, I was the Charlie Sykes of MAGA, until January 6th, and now I realize how wrong I was, and it's okay. Adam Kinzinger, I tend to fight MAGA like kind of head on because I'm kind of pissed at him. The great thing about Rich is he's like, I get it, guys. I get it. Just come on over. So that's, yeah. Yeah, he is. Yep.
Moderator's privilege. I'm going to take 2 or 3. We've done this before. It actually works better to do it this way. I'm going to take 2 or 3, and then the panel will take time responding to like those 2 or 3 questions. Yeah, one in the back there.
Yeah, so just a comment with a question. So I'm a father of an 8-year-old or an 8th grade dog, and one of the things we do in Illinois is we do a constitution test every year. And one of the things we did while studying was studying the 15 principles. So the group was new to me, and it helped my daughter realize that there are certain things that are not a party belief, but a government belief. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Great.
And then my comment is the 2 things that scare me the most right now are people saying that the bond market is what's scaring Trump, and the worry that the Supreme Court is like the only guardrail. Now, where do you guys really see what's going to happen with the Supreme Court? And what happens if Trump, even more so, just thumbs his nose at that? Is that the breaking point? I'm wondering, if we're having this meeting 3 months from now, what's the next breaking point in all this?
Great. So Supreme Court defiance.
Hi, Dan, Adam, you guys were members of Congress. What tips and tricks that we don't know can help us be effective constituents to effectively get our points across to our members of Congress? And, I know going to town halls, but are there any things that we are not thinking of? Are there things that were effective that your people that you represented did to make sure that they were able to bend your ear, get a response, and then get results?
Great question. And then we'll do one more. And then
how many Republican senators does it take to peel off before the wheels fall off this? 4. I think it's a small number.
Great set of questions. Who wants to start?
Well, I would like to start with the Supreme Court question because I'm obsessed with this because this is, in many ways, this is the tectonic plates of democracy, whether or not there's going to be a check on the president, especially since Congress has decided to completely abdicate. So you look at who could stop Donald Trump. It's a very small list. It is the Supreme Court, it is the bond market, and maybe it's the electorate. But let's start with the Supreme Court. I think we should all be skeptical of this court. However, Donald Trump has scoffed at the court, has insulted the court, has tried to bully the court. And in the last couple of weeks, you're starting to see that the justices are not having it. 2 things happened last week that I thought were very significant. First, one of the most prominent conservative judges in America, Jay Wilkinson from the Fourth Circuit, wrote this really scathing opinion about the deportation policy, made an appeal to the administration, but made it very clear that this was a fundamental constitutional principle. And he wrote it in very clear language. Clearly, the members of the Supreme Court either were influenced by him or were already there because they acted with something that you rarely see, real speed and definitiveness issuing an opinion at 1 in the morning that tells me, number one, they are paying attention. They watch Donald Trump mocking them and gaslighting them in the Oval Office. They understand that he's threatening to defy them, and they no longer trust the Trump administration. You don't issue an order like that at 1 in the morning unless you think, you know what, if we don't act right now, these guys are going to screw with us. These guys are going to ignore. So we are in the constitutional crisis. The question you're asking is, will they stay? I think at this point, you should be hopeful that you have at least 7 members of that court, with the exception of Alito and Thomas, who I think get this, who understand the gravity of it. So will you have 5 justices who will stay firm? Maybe. Then the question I think that you were asking is, will Donald Trump try to defy them? That's going to be the extraordinary moment, because he has been successful, remarkably successful, in delegitimizing one institution, one guardrail after another. And there's a tremendous constituency among MAGA for ignoring the courts, for deciding that we don't have to follow the law. The fact that Elon Musk was even talking, remember Elon Musk? He's kind of been quiet lately. Probably doing his sperm donor thing, but he or worrying about his Tesla stuff. But he was actually leading the cause that we impeach federal judges. That, I think, is going to be the real test, because you'll notice that the Republican members of Congress have been absolutely silent about any of this. So that, I think, is going to be one of those stress tests. And to go back to Adam's analogy, I see a lot of problems on the left. I think that illiberalism on the left is like a slow-growing cancer. This is the heart attack, though. We need to bring the EMTs in, and this will be the urgent heart attack. You have to deal with this right now, and that may be on us within a few months.
Any other?
What were the other questions? There was the one about...
The other question was how to be an effective citizen vis-a-vis members of Congress. And then the other question was the senators pulling people away. How much does it take to really make the house of cards fall down around Trump?
Yeah, I mean, look, honestly, if Trump lost 4 Republican senators, I actually think Trump's agenda is frozen anyway. I mean, maybe they get this reconciliation bill through and he does like tax cut extension or whatever. But for all intents and purposes, he's not going to do much legislative action. In fact, the last Congress was the least productive Congress since the year before the Civil War, when Congress was probably focused on other things. And so they're not going to do that, which is good and bad. It's good because obviously they're not doing bad stuff. It's bad because that gives Donald Trump the opportunity to operate in a vacuum. What pisses me off about these senators, by the way, and I'm going to pick on one right now if I can, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. Bill Cassidy voted to remove Donald Trump from office in the Senate. We were on a little text group we called Band of Brothers, okay? And it was all the House members that voted to impeach and a few of the senators that voted to remove, okay? And he was so courageous until an election year. And by the way, every member of the House every year is in an election year. And so you look and you're like, okay, Senator was brave. Wait, but now it's an election year. He's voting for RFK, even though he's a doctor. He's voting for Pete Hegseth. He's talking about how great Trump is. No courage, right? And so you have to recognize that. But I think it takes 4, and there is a cadre of 4. You take McConnell, and the others, and Alaska, Maine, Murkowski, those people, all those people. That can stop the agenda. But
how do you think Tom Tillis feels about being bullied into voting to confirm Pete Hegseth right now? I mean, he had to eat the biggest shit sandwich in Washington.
Yep. I can't stand Tom Tillis. And then you want to answer the action stuff on the House or anything?
Yeah, it's like it's so hard because members of Congress look to their primaries where they're most concerned, and that's why Trump has such a grip on the Republican Party and Republican members of Congress, because he has such a grip on enough Republicans, in pretty much every district. But there are members do not want to have trouble. They do not want to be hearing constantly from their constituents in any way possible. As Adam said, I do not recommend going after them in public places, but it's a tough nut to crack because they're so concerned about the next election, and it's hard. I mean, it's so tough for me because I had such a different view of what it meant to be as a representative as most of my colleagues had. I will never forget, in December of 2020, I'm on my way out. I'm in the House Problem Solvers Caucus. These Republicans were on this call, Democrats, Republicans saying, I just hear constantly, everywhere I go, and in my office keeps hearing constantly, that, don't certify the presidential electors. And I never told my colleagues, I never told them what to do. I always thought, that's not my role. But on this call, I said, look, there's a time where you need to stand up and be courageous. All right? And so I felt like I stood up. I was willing to buck my party. I didn't regret it. I stood up for things that I thought were important. And so you need to do that. There's lines that you need to draw and should not cross. Okay? And perhaps, it just came to mind right now, whether this really works or not, is to get some of these Republicans on record as saying, this is a line I will not cross. Get them to, some of the Republicans to say, okay, if Trump does this, I am going to, vote to impeach. I'm going to do more than just, you see these members of Congress just, I don't like Trump's tariffs, what he's doing with tariffs right now, blah, 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 blah. They don't stand up and do anything. They're a member of Congress. They think just saying, well, I'm going to throw some rhetoric out there, and people are going to, and when the election comes around, I'm going to say, well, I spoke up. Well, that doesn't,
they voted.
They
voted to give him the power, though.
Actually,
they're on record.
They're put on record now on that. It's tough. It is not easy, but
keep doing what you're doing. That's a good thing.
That's right.
My other favorite response they give is, I haven't seen that. I haven't heard of that yet. I haven't heard him say that yet. How have you not heard that? But I will just say on this question about how to be effective, you don't realize it, but we're doing it right now to a large degree. I mean, part of the idea that they trade on in MAGA land is the idea that they do these big rallies. They get a lot, Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk. You've seen Charlie does these turning point fests where he flies, pays. I mean, this is how it started. He raised a bunch of money, paid to fly all these college students down to this place, and they took pictures of all these students in the room. So it creates this sense for legislators, for other people who think that they're conservatives, that, this is where all the energy is. They've got all the people, they've got all the crowds. That must be who I need to placate. Well, tonight they're seeing a different group of people. And just the image of this full room is going to wake some people up who represent Illinois, quite frankly, because this is larger, I'll tell you, than some of the regional Republican dinners. And that's why we're doing these, because every time that a picture pops up of a full room like this in the middle of Chicago or in Dallas, we had one, I'll tell you, we had one of these in Dallas, okay? And we had Colin Allred speak. We also had a bunch of former military members speak about just the threats going on to our America's foreign policy. And 3 days before, after we had sold out the event, three days before, we get an email from Senator Ted Cruz's state legislative director, who would like to come because they're interested in our principles and hear what we're talking about. Okay, so I give it as an example. They were nervous. They were nervous. Who are these people gathering in large numbers, talking about principles and trying to hold us accountable? So doing this, I mean, for every person in this room tonight, I guarantee you there are 10 others out there who would be here tonight if they knew that it was happening, because that's the dirty secret that they don't want you to know is there actually are more of us out there than there are of them. They're just louder. They've just got more time on their hands to spew and do this and show up in the fields. And like, we just got to keep doing this. If we do this, it's a snowball effect. More people will come to the banner. So this is a big part of it, is just showing up in large numbers and making it known that, hey, we're here. This is a crowd that you can be a part of. It's not, we're not crazy. We're committed. We're patriots. Some of us Republican, some of us Democrat, but this is a good way to do it. We'll do maybe two more questions, and then whoa, there's a lot. There'll be time afterwards. Here's right here at the front.
Wait for another one or just say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, a lot of this discussion revolving around Democrats versus Republicans, what each party needs to do. Is there a point that you envision a possibility where that model doesn't work anymore? And I remember the founding fathers, they were terrified of the impacts of a two-party system. I never got where they thought 3 or 4 would be better or not, but do you envision some circumstances getting so bad you need to throw away this model, start with new parties, new stuff? And I'm not advocating revolution stuff. I mean, are we that bad that we're going to give up on both parties trying to come together to try to solve some of our problems?
Good question. There's one.
Well, I had first a comment just on effective citizenship. Adam's Country First, which I follow, you have the advocate toolkit, which I think is really, really helpful. I live in southern Wisconsin, Gainesville, and I think that it's been really important to have presence in that district. And you said write letters to the editor, go out to town halls, and that's an office of the toolkit's on there. I don't work for Adam.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great.
I don't follow that. I had a question on what about the other side and these things that we hear about, like in terms of civil war, like are they readying in a lot more of a violent way? Like it's great to come out and be part of this where we can say we can be an alternative, but what about the other side who might be readying in a different way and ready to arm themselves and have armed conflict? I'm slightly worried about that whole world that might see organizing like this as some signal.
Hey, we'll do one more, but so we got new party, we got civil war, we've got Steve. Steve, I see.
It's slightly possible.
Yeah.
Steve. It's possible.
I want to say, particularly Mr. Kinzinger, thanks for your service to the January 6th committee.
Thank you.
2020, and I'm glad someone stood up for us. We were all basically accused of fraud and, of a nonsense loser candidate who shouldn't even be in office anymore. But to me, that radicalized me to the point where I sued them off in Illinois, won until the Supreme Court decided wrongly, and I bought the Capitol medal from the White House gift shop, and I heard the reversion and all this stuff. So to everybody, my question is, what are we going to do to help encourage people to respect election results and protect election workers? And also, Adam, when you saw my White House gift certificate.
Yeah, I will.
There was one over here. Sorry. Yeah, right there.
You three gentlemen, former Congress, or two gentlemen, former Congressmen, are you just talking to the general population out here, or are you talking to people inside Congress and representatives elsewhere? And can you tell us what are they thinking? What are they doing? Even if it's just behind the scenes? I feel sometimes like we're just talking to a little circle inside and nobody else outside is hearing.
So that we'll bite it off there.
So I'll address the ones. I'm going to go first so I can pick what I want to address. No, I'm just kidding. I do want to talk about the Civil War one. I have said that it is important for us to recognize that that is a threat, because I think we'd be wrong to not recognize that. Now, it's not going to be the blue against the gray. It's not going to be mass formations fighting mass formations. It's not even going to be like the movie Civil War. What you could see in theory, is something like Northern Ireland, right, where there is violence against political leaders, intimidation. You saw this in Iraq during the insurgency. That's the kind of thing that would be possible. Do I think it's likely? Not right now, because in all honesty, I think a lot of these people that kind of role play Civil War, or they're cosplaying military. A lot of these people are actually not veterans. They never served. They regret it. And they use this as a way to kind of feel like they're fighting for something big, right? Hanging out with the guys at the campfire shooting guns, and they think the war will be like that. It won't. And so I think a lot of them are much more cowardly than they actually think they are. But I do think it is important for us to recognize that violence is a real threat here. It's the 30th anniversary of Oklahoma City, right? Now, how many people took inspiration from Timothy McVeigh? There are a lot that have. How many people own a crap load of guns, and think about the day that the government comes after them, but now that they're the government, it's the opposition that comes after them. I would encourage everybody, well, I'm not even gonna go there, but I do think it's a risk, and I think I would encourage people to, by the way, read the book from Barbara Walter, not Walters. It's called How Civil Wars Start. And she has basically studied civil wars throughout the world. And one thing you recognize, when a majority race or ethnic group is about to lose power, that is the most dangerous part in a country. And that's what you're seeing is this race grievance that's being used right now. And I think there's a way to disinfect that, but through optimism and everything else putting into it. But I do think it's important to recognize that it's a real threat. Not to scare you, but I think we have to be wide-eyed about what's going on out there.
I think in what I most want to leave you with is, Adam has touched on this a couple of times. I think one of the biggest problems we have in this country now is people feel lost. They are disgruntled by some of the things that have happened. I think 2008 is such a turning point year in this country and in the world that people aren't really focused on. They're upset. They want something positive. Adam talked about, I mean, what he said about young men, I mean, that is so critically important. It is so important, and it's up to all of us, especially men when it comes to young men, but in general, to young people who are really disaffected and really have lost hope. They have to be given hope in something, right? And so that's why it's not just enough. I mean, it's important to oppose Donald Trump and what he's doing, but that's not enough. That's not going to set our country on a good, positive path going forward. Right? We need to offer that. Trump came to all these people who were disgruntled, and he offered them something that appealed to them, and some things that they legitimately disgruntled about, some things that were not legitimate, but he offered them something. We have to offer them something better. We need to be doing that. I think members of Congress right now, they're the same as they always were. Members of Congress, people used to ask me when I first got to Congress, my father served in Congress for 22 years before me. I was political science and studied Congress. They said, anything surprise you now that you're a member of Congress? And the thing I would say is not really. I understood most of it. But what did surprise me is how little backbone members have. That's what surprised me more than anything. So you asked, what are they talking about now? Well, there are Republicans who don't like what's going on, but they don't want to really step forward and they don't have the courage to do anything about it. That they're somehow being in Congress is more important. And so, that's what I'm hearing. So we need to offer that. I mean, that's the closing word that I have. We need to offer something. Be concerned about what's going on and what may happen, but don't focus on it. Don't get so, just down and depressed. And we live in the greatest country in the world, ever in the world. We just need to fight to continue on the things that this country is founded upon. And we need to know that we need to do that. We need to let others know that that's what we need to do. But we are so blessed in this country with what we have, what we've been given. We need to have gratitude for that and commit ourselves to making sure that we hand this down to generations to come.
Could I end on a note of fear? Well, no, I mean, maybe connect the dots here. Lisa Murkowski, senator from Alaska, said last week, it was rather striking how many senators, United States senators, members of Congress, are scared. They're afraid. They're afraid of political retribution, but they're also, I think there is that undertone of physical fear. And this is real. So it's not just that it's a real danger. The fear of that danger, I think, influences people. I actually do have one Republican congressman that I do talk to. And basically, bottom line is, they see the same things that we're seeing. They have to go to the town hall meetings and get, hear from people who are terrified about Social Security. But they feel they have no options. None. They cannot break with the party. They don't dare antagonize MAGA. And Adam was the one, I think, who pointed this out to me. I said, well, aren't they afraid of being defeated for re-election? And he said, and Dan made the same point, no, they're afraid of losing the primary. If you're a Republican congressman and you lose to a Democrat, you're still part of the tribe. You can still get an ambassadorship or a job. You break with MAGA, you not only bring out the flying monkeys, you're now exiled. We all know what it's like to be exiled. It's not comfortable. So right now, I think most members of Congress are frozen. I think they are scared. I think they're scared politically. I think they're scared physically. And I think that this is something that we need to be really honest about, is how much making people afraid and using fear as a weapon has defined the first 100 days of the Trump administration. The only way that you counter that, as Heath mentioned, is by pushing back against the bully. The thing about bullies is that the more people who give in to them, give them the lunch money, the more empowered they are. But if they get punched in the nose, and when people realize, okay, Donald Trump is not 10 feet tall, he is not of unlimited power, I can actually make common cause with others. Heath's point about how important it is to be in this room. So all the university presidents in America were absolutely terrified to stand up against Donald Trump, right? They're looking around going, we could lose billions of dollars. They were frightened until this week when, in fact, just today, 222 of them signed a letter basically saying we stand with Harvard. So now there's collective action. Now they're going, okay, wait, you know what? If we actually stick together, maybe they can't pick us off. They can't be fearful of all of this. That has always been what needed to happen in Congress, a critical mass of people engaging in collective action saying, we're not going to do it. 4 senators, how many? If there were 4 Republicans in the House and 4 Republicans in the Senate, Donald Trump's presidency would, it won't be over, but his power and that illusion that there are no checks would vanish. So it's not that huge. So the key thing is to push back, push through the fear, to courage. But in order to have courage, human beings need to know that if they look over their shoulder, there's somebody there.
Can I say something to that just real quick? The fear stuff. So you guys may know Donald Trump suspended my non-existent security clearance twice already. I'm waiting for the 4th and 5th time. He said the other day, unfortunately, him and Liz got pardoned because they deserve jail. My response to that, look, could I be fearful yes. Let's be honest, that could be a scary thing. But the thing I've said, I'm not saying this to sound heroic, but the thing I've said to Trump literally 100, as much as I can, is frickin' bring it, try it. Come get me. Seriously, come arrest me, put me in jail, and by the way, I'll Nelson Mandela you and be 4 times more effective. And I'll make sure that when you're out of office, America runs you out of town, and the name Trump becomes the biggest curse word you can ever say in this country. And I mean that. Do I want him to come after me? No. But if he does, F him, right? And I think the more people that stand up like the 220 universities, you only have power if people think you have power. That's it. Otherwise, your power is being a fat, weak man.
And I'll just say on this, I think the party question is the only one that we didn't really touch. I do think that that you may. I think a new party is just so hard institutionally to do. It's a lot of people in Principles First who come. That's an idea.
I considered running as an independent a couple of years ago. It's really, really hard to do.
Yeah, that was the one thing I was going to say is it's hard to run as an independent. It's even harder to run as under a new party label. So you might actually could see some independent candidates sprout up. Evan McMullen tried this in Utah. In certain places where the Democrat stands down and they're running functionally as a Democrat, but it's interesting.
And I wasn't proposing that. I just want to know at a higher level. I think we're so bad that this system doesn't work, we gotta come up with something else, that's all. So I recognize.
Yes, it is that bad, but no, he won't come up with a different system. I mean, that's. Sorry.
Although I will say there's a verse in the Bible that says, if no man worships God, the rocks will cry out. And I kind of feel like if people feel unrepresented for long enough, they will tear all the barriers down. And that'll be the key. The Democrats' opportunity is to be the party that's the Big Tent. If they're not, then yes, I think a third party could happen.
And the last thing I'll say on this question is, are we talking to members of Congress? Yes. I mean, I have members of Congress. I mean, I do this on a volunteer basis. I have members of Congress who I would never have thought I would have heard from them, reaching out to me saying, "Wow, that was a great summit y'all put together. That's hey, we should get lunch or something next time you're in D.C." I'm like, you want to get lunch with me? Why? If anyone saw you getting lunch with me, you'd be out of office. So those conversations happen. To their points, it's like it doesn't manifest yet in what they're doing to stand up. I'll tell you, I had another conversation with a member of Congress right before the election. He thought that he was of the view that Trump was going to lose, and he was concerned that Trump was going to deny the election after the fact and can kind of go on this whole thing about how he actually won and try to take off. And so he kind of wanted to talk to like legal experts about like what are the arguments that he can make after the fact if that were to come to pass in the Congress to push back against that. So we're there as sort of a resource because there aren't any resources like that for them to have conversations like that. So there have been instances like that. I will say on the senator point, 2 of those 4 were very, very close to speaking at the Principles First Summit. So that's another thing that is useful in this way is like every time we do a Principles First event, it's a new test of courage for those folks. It's a new opportunity. I mean, we ask every time. And we create good relationships with those people. I mean, we're trying to win them with honey, right? Because every time someone stands in front of a Principles First banner and gives a speech, it's probably not a speech that Donald Trump wants to hear. And so that is another strategy of this, is that when we show up in large numbers, that political capital rises for us. And it becomes a greater magnet for those people to want to stand on our stage instead of Charlie Kirk's. And so that's the battle that's happening, right? And so, that the Principles First Summit we do every year in February, that's gone from like 300 people to this year it was 1,200 with a wait list of like 300. The Proud Boys, to your point about Civil War, the Proud Boys showed up and did a bomb threat on us. Yeah, we're on the map. It's growing. Guys, we could be literally doing this in every city. There's people out there who feel exactly like you feel, and we're just trying to keep up with it. So that's what I would say. At the margins, like, we can really do it. I think it's actually I'm actually more optimistic that those folks could be peeled away. I mean, I look at people like Don Bacon in Nebraska. I mean, a lot of these members of Congress in these swingy districts are going to be confronting a terrible map in 2026 if the tariffs are still in place, the economy is really bad. I mean, Don Bacon has already basically said Pete Hegseth should go. He's taken Trump to task for this deportation thing. I mean, he knows what he has to do to win his Nebraska seat. And he's one of those that we talk to basically. We encourage him when we're able to and can, and we're proud of the way that he stood up. But there are others out there. So I just say that's sort of the inside baseball look of how we translate what happens in these rooms into influence with the people who are already there. Now, obviously, we want to influence them externally as well, like this, and at the ballot box and hold them accountable. But that's a way to have sort of real world impact in the here and now is the only thing that I would add. And with that, we are at time. So I just want to thank everyone again for coming. And I will say, we'll continue to do dinners like this, gatherings around the country. Some folks came to Dallas Our next event is going to be May 8th in New York City. We are doing one on public corruption and the rule of law. We've got Mimi Roca coming, who is the Westchester District Attorney. We've got a lot of the big law associates who have resigned as a result of what's gone on at the big law firms. Hagen Scotton, who was one of the SDNY AUSAs who resigned when Bondi told him that he had to drop the Eric Adams case, will be there. We'll be awarding him an award. And so that's, we're just trying to bring together the folks who are standing up for these things to really put it in focus. It's open to the press. The press was here this evening, so you'll see in Chicago 7 News 7 was here. I think all the newspapers. So we're getting visibility on it. It's helping. Thank you so much for being here, because it wouldn't happen if the room wasn't full and people were behind it. So thank you. Safe travels, and thank you for coming to Principles First. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.